So this is the video number 3 of our essay workshop series. And today, the first thing that we're going to talk about is picking a topic. So as you gathered from our previous lessons, the essays give you the freedom to talk about basically anything you want in your life. Particularly the personal statement. The prompts give you total freedom for what to talk about. So yeah, you can really get creative. So I want to talk about 2 different paths of how you can choose your topic. The main focus, though, that you should remember is that you want to showcase positive and unique characteristics about yourself. Remember that the admissions officers are going to be reading thousands of essays, so making yourself seem good and also stand out is always a plus. And your essays aren't a time to be humble, it's time to really showcase what you've done and talk about yourself and what you've done and stuff like that. So the first route to picking a topic for your essay would be to pick something in your life, like a hobby that you have, an extracurricular, a topic you really like, stuff like that. And then think of points that you can make within that topic. So for example, if you want to talk about a sport, for example, I did running. I could talk about running as my topic basically, and then my points could be, running taught me to be a really persistent worker and keep going. Running connected to me to a community and made me a good team player. And running helped me manage my time and balance my time because it took up a lot of my day and I had to schedule my other activities around it. So if I wanted to, I could write my entire essay about running, and then within that, I'm showcasing 3 positive characteristics about myself, which are that I'm persistent, I'm a good team player, and I have good time management. So that's one example of how you could pick a topic. But for me, that's a little bit harder to do because it's really difficult for me to decide like what in my life is the most important activity that I really want to discuss. That's just a bit daunting to pick a topic like that. But if you do have something that you really like and you want to just make that the focus of your essay and talk about different things within it, then that's great. And you can totally do that. So now I'm going to talk about the second method of picking a topic, which worked a little better for me. And that's to pick your theme for what you want to showcase first, and then think of an example that shows that. So for me, what I actually did in my real personal statement essay is I've said I want to showcase how I'm very consistent and I can stick to a habit, and I'm motivated to stick to that habit. I thought that was a really good characteristic and it stood out. And then I thought of examples in my life of how I've displayed that characteristic. And what I ended up going with is journaling and writing letters to my future self. That's a habit that I've stuck with and something that I've done every day, even though it doesn't take that long. I just do it a little bit every day. And then I talked a lot about that and all brought it back to how that shows that I'm very self-motivated and I can stick to a routine and do a habit every day for years and years and years. So you can also go down that route and pick something about yourself that you want to showcase. And then you can think of an example or several examples of how you've done that. So if you want to show that you're really dedicated to your community, you could have a bunch of examples of, maybe you volunteer and then maybe you tutor others, and then maybe you like help out with little kids, and those 3 points all show one thing about yourself and they all tie back to that, and then you would elaborate within those points within your essay. So those are 2 different ways that you can pick a topic, either starting off with an activity and then asking like what are some things that that activity shows, or starting off with something you want to show about yourself and then asking what activities have I done that showcase that. So either of those work, and I would encourage you to play around just on an empty document with some bullet points and writing out ideas for possible topics. So now we're going to switch gears and talk about actually writing your essay and what sort of how you should kind of write and frame your essay. So I would definitely recommend putting the reader in the scene rather than just describing it to them. So, for example, instead of saying, I was nervous for my race, you could try, I stared down the length of the track, sweat already covering my brow as I waited for the gun to go off. So you can see that sentence is a lot more interesting than I was nervous for my race. It really puts the reader there. And then even though I don't use the word nervous, you can clearly tell that since I'm like sweating, that I'm nervous for my race, which even though I don't use the word race, you can tell that I'm about to run because I'm standing on a track. So then there's another example down here. I like art because it allows me to be creative and express myself, which is very factual and just kind of stating the information. Whereas if you word it differently, for example, I can spend hours sketching the creatures of my imagination, channeling my thoughts beyond words, then it's a lot more expressive of how exactly art is meaningful to you. So something about making these sentences more descriptive is that it will definitely take up more words, and for all your essays, you're gonna have word count. So it is a little bit challenging, and there's definitely no need to be like over wordy, but you should definitely play around with putting the reader into the scene and helping them imagine what's going on. Something else is that it's sometimes really hard to come up with your very first sentence of your essay. So putting them in the scene is a great way to do that. But I would recommend if you're struggling with that first sentence, because I know that's really difficult, is to just start from the middle of your essay and then pick your first sentence later. So that you can just like get over that first hurdle and then figure out the rest later on. So yeah, that's a little bit about imagery and picking your topic. And now we're going to look at some examples. Okay, so I just typed in the chat a link. It's the same link as the last meeting, but now there's a second essay on that document. So we're looking at essay number 2. It's on page number 2. It's a personal statement that someone wrote. So yeah, we're gonna take maybe like 4 or 5 minutes to read through it. And then as we're reading, we're gonna think of these questions. So what do we learn about the writer? And what did the writer do well? And also keep in mind the 2 things that we just talked about, which was topics and imagery. So we're all gonna take a couple minutes to read this essay. All right, so hopefully we all got a chance to look through that essay. And now we're gonna talk about it. So starting from the beginning, November 23rd, 2 years ago, Thanksgiving. The reader is clearly giving us a scene, and then they're really diving into this very specific anecdote from their life. And then in the sentence after that, after carrying the food to their kitchens, our brief visits with them were filled with laughter, hugs, and the sharing of family photo albums. So from that description, we can see that she is really touching these seniors and like helping them during a holiday, which is really great. So instead of just saying, oh, these visits were very like heartfelt or something like that, she's giving specific examples of how she's impacting their lives and how it's a positive moment. And then we're kind of transitioning to how she's noticing these signs of loneliness. She gives us very specific examples. The windows with dust suggesting that they hadn't been opened in ages, the faded Christmas cards from 10 years ago, and the tables with a single play setting. So that those are very vivid descriptions of what's going on around her, and it really makes you picture these seniors that are like sad and lonely during the holidays. And that really contrasts from what she said before about like hugs and laughter. So you can really see the positive impact that she's having on these seniors by visiting. And then she doesn't stop there. She starts talking about how she wants to make a change and help these seniors in some way. So then she talks about how she became part of the Senior Citizen Commission. So you can see that she's being very specific and showing a specific example of how she helps her community by name dropping the exact organization that she joined, how she got into it and stuff like that, instead of just being like, oh, I wanted to make a change in my community. No, she's mentioning a specific organization, which is great. And then when she says like she formally applied and was unanimously appointed and became the youngest commissioner in Fremont's history. So tying that back to like how you shouldn't be humble in these essays, it's your time to shine. She's clearly dropping some facts that back up how this was really influential and an important step, because she's unanimously appointed and the youngest commissioner. So those are really impressive facts to back up what she's doing. So then afterward, she gives more details on exactly what she did, calling nursing homes, negotiating with movie theater managers, and recruiting teen volunteers. So those are very specific. And then she also gives a specific example of an event that she organized called the Senior Movie Outing. So she's showing not only did I join this organization, I also did some cool stuff. Here's an example of a cool thing I did and exactly like some of the details that I had to do to make it happen. And then she discusses how that made a change in her community. The commissioners became more respectful of my contributions and open to my input. So she's also showing how her hard work helped her overcome a challenge. And then she gives another example of advocating to fund Lavender seniors. So she's showing how even though there's never been funding for this before from their organization, she was able to convince them and get them funding. So that's two examples of how she helped a lot as a commissioner. And then at the end, she's talking about kind of wrapping it all up and talking about how she's a voice for seniors, basically. And yeah, so this is a really strong essay. And then another reason that I like this essay is because it's showing a lot about the writer, because not only is she dedicated to her community, it shows that she can overcome challenges, and she can take on a lot of hard work, and she's very proactive, and if she sees a problem, she will go and address it. So this is another really strong essay. So yeah. Okay, now we're going to look at more examples of supplemental essays. So we're back to the Harvard supplemental essay prompts. Like I said before, just a quick recap, a lot of the supplemental essay prompts from different schools will be very similar. Talking about community and like academics, what you want to do. So yeah, we're just going to look at Harvard's. And today we're looking at their second question, which is briefly describe an intellectual experience that was important to you. So you get 10 to 200 words for this, and here is an example. So we'll all take a few minutes to read through it, and then we'll come back and discuss it. Okay, so now that we've all read through that, let's talk about it. So the question is, briefly describe an intellectual experience that was important to you. And this student chose to talk about an AI program and how that impacted them. So what I like about this essay is that they're not only describing what they do in detail and what exactly interested them about it. So it was an AI program, and they were interested in like binary and how computers are actually like processing things that we input in them. They also discuss what they want to do after that academic experience. So they believe that, maybe schools should utilize AI to help students become more connected with stuff that interests them. So they're not only talking about exactly what they did and some examples and how that kind of influenced what they think, but they also talked about ways that they want to apply that in the future. And then they also end with a question that really makes you think, what if students worldwide had access to choosing ethnic studies in education instead of simply history? So that makes you think about what they want to do with this after this educational experience. They think that Maybe students should be able to choose more specific topics to study, and the way that we can help them be able to study these different topics is by utilizing AI. So yeah, this is a really good essay, and it only took 147 words, so they really do have 53 more words, which they could have used, but also at the same time, if you've said everything you want to say, there's not really a point in adding more. So yeah, it's up to you. Yeah, at this point, I'm gonna open it up for questions. You can type it in the chat. And if anyone has a bit of a longer or more personal question, you can always email me. If you want me to like look over something you've written, you can email that to me as well. Yeah. And I would definitely recommend for practice just either brainstorming stuff, topic ideas, or just like practice, or just looking up some supplemental essay prompts and kind of typing away, it's not your real essay. So yeah, I would recommend practicing. To answer your question, Kristen, yes, there is a recording of this meeting. Everything is recorded and you can watch it. You put the supplemental essay in the chat. Yes, I can. Okay. Okay, so first I'm gonna put the link in the chat. Okay, so that's the document if you want to look at it. You can also just search up like Harvard supplemental essays or whatever school you want, like UVA supplemental essays, UCLA supplemental essays. Yeah, they have lots of examples. Okay, our next question is, what happens if you forget certain details about an event you want to write? That's a really great question. For me, I would say the people reading your event, you're reading your essay, we're not at that event, so you can say whatever you want. You can make up details to support your case if you want, or you can just leave those parts out. It's really up to you. So if I really wanted to write about like a race that I had run in cross country, but I forgot certain details about it, I could maybe just pull in parts from different races that I've run, to kind of like fill in those gaps. But yeah, the readers of your essays were not there, so you can just kind of create your own story to show what happened, even if you don't remember exactly like what was said or stuff like that. Yeah, okay. Next question is, for the main essay, is it a good strategy to study or to focus on one theme or link themes related? For example, perseverance in science and also in academic field. That's a good question. So I would say you can really do whatever you want and whatever makes you seem the strongest. So if you want, you could write about your main topic could be perseverance, and then you're saying, I was perseverant in sports, I was perseverant in school, I was perseverant in my community, and have a bunch of examples. Or if you want, you can just pick like one thing and focus a lot about that. You could write about like, I don't know, if you play like soccer or something and write about a certain game where you faced the challenge and you persevered through it, and write a lot about that. It's really up to you and how much you want to elaborate on each of those points. Yeah. For the Common App, you can do kind of whatever you want. Yeah, either way, I would say a good tip is to, at the end of your essay, definitely like tie it all back together, kind of go over all the points you had, and then leave one final thing that you want the reader to remember. So if we look back at the example we read today, the last sentence was, I'm proud to be a trusted voice for seniors in my community. So that sentence really wraps up everything that she said in that essay so far, and summarizes it by saying that she's a voice for seniors.